And this contest of ideas, what emerges from it are new ideas that have a better chance of being accurate. And this is how you have the rise of accurate and relatable philosophies to the natural world. That was going on 1,000 years ago. So, in Baghdad, at that time, algebra was invented. An entire branch of mathematics. One of the most fundamental branches of mathematics. Algebra was invented. That's an Arabic word. Many of the AL words come from the Arabic. Another word, algorithm. These are common words in our language. They were basically invented in the day, contemporary with Al-Hazm, 1,000 years ago, in what has been known as the golden age of Islam, by the way. And our numerals are what? What kind of numerals are we using? Yeah, we use Arabic numerals. Have you ever thought about that? Arabic numerals? Was it just a name for it, you're not even thinking about it? By the way, I think I heard someone say Roman numeral. Did I hear that? I hope he's not still using Roman numerals. Do you know Roman numerals don't have a zero? You cannot write zero in Roman numerals. The zero was not yet invented. In fact, the zero was invented in India, or the subcontinent, and it was a curiosity, didn't quite know what to do with it, how to fully exploit it. News of it reached Baghdad, they ran with it. Zero came of age, and over that period. Oh, by the way, many of these numerals also had origins in the subcontinent. In fact, in Baghdad at the time, they didn't call them Arabic numerals. They called them, not Indian, thank you, Hindi numerals. And so, but basically, this kind of communication enriches. Once you realize that mathematics is the language of the universe, then if you are mastering mathematics, you are essentially uncovering the engines of what make things work. And also, so Arabic numerals are part of this. Another thing about Roman numerals, not only is there no zero, since the Julian and Gregorian calendars, the Julian calendar on which the Gregorian calendar was based, was formed at a time before anyone had zero at their disposal. So that's why there is no year zero, because the concept did not exist. So in the calendar it goes from 1 BC to AD 1. And so these are some of the shortcomings of it. Now, there was one last bastion of Roman numerals in American culture. Remember, what is that? Rocky. Super Bowl, of course. Because apparently Roman numerals are manly, you know?
Rocky movies.
Super Bowl, LXVI3X. We are men and we use letters for numbers, you know. And so a couple of years ago, it occurred to me, and then I tweeted it. It occurred to me we were up to like Super Bowl 48. So what's that? That's XLVIII. Okay? So then we go to Super Bowl 49. XLIX. Then I thought, you know, in 2 years, all that goes away and you just get L. You lose all your manhood there. How would you show that on the screen? Super Bowl 12. Super Bowl L. And so I just noted this impending disaster. And then 6 months after that tweet, I would read in the paper, the NFL has decided, beginning with Super Bowl 50, they will use Arabic numerals. So is 2016 Super Bowl 50?
Yeah.
Okay, so watch for the big 5-0. Right? So I don't know if I had anything to do with it. They would have figured it out on their own. They would have stumbled on it. It's like, whoa, where did our man letters go? You know? All right, so over that period, this is 1,000 years, the golden age of Islam. Agriculture, engineering, medicine, this was a golden age. 1,000 years ago, the 11th century. And then it kind of all stopped. It stopped. Remember, this is about science illiteracy. So there are forces that can operate on your science literacy to render you basically scientifically illiterate. So one of those forces was a well-known and widely read Islamic scholar, Al-Ghazali. He's still read to this day. I own 6 books by him. And he's around right at that time. And so watch what's happening. He's a Muslim scholar, and no one had yet really codified what it is to be a good Muslim in the way that St. Augustine and others would codify what it is to be a good Christian. Somebody had to put all that together philosophically and take a read of the scripture and turn it into a thing that you follow, right? Because right when these things begin, it's kind of it's almost a free-for-all. And so he codified what that should be. And it included things like, whatever happens, it's the will of God. So, for example, if I take my shoe and I just put it here, and then like it does that, oh, you couldn't see whether my shoe fell. Okay. Okay. So the accounting for that is Allah willed that. Now think about it. If before then you just simply don't know why the shoe fell, then it's something you might investigate and bring your mathematical armament to figure out how and why. But if you now have an explanation for it, and you're content in that explanation, you will never be the person who discovers the laws of gravity. So something as simple and as reverent as God is accountable for everything can take away an entire stratum of curiosity that feeds your access, that would otherwise feed your access to decoding the world. Not only that, mathematics was deemed an earthly pursuit, and people were encouraged to have primarily spiritual pursuits. And so math was suppressed relative to other conduct of reverence. And so, now here's an interesting thing. If you ask historians, why did the golden age of Islam collapse? They will typically answer with regard to changes of power or war. And yes, of course, there's no doubt that that matters. And they'll cite what happened in Baghdad in 1258. It was sacked by the Mongols. Okay? That was bad. That was not good for civilization. Okay? So then what happens to the centers of Islam? Well, it spreads and goes other parts of Europe, and it rises again, particularly in the Iberian Peninsula, Spain. And so the culture returns, but there's no attendant discovery, such as what you had back in the Golden Age. And so what happens now? In a 250-year period, the culture rises again, there's no attendant scholarship, and then there's another. So the Christians sacked Granada. Granada was a centerpiece, like what Iraq was, what Baghdad was in the Golden Age. Granada was later on. And so one could argue, you could say, oh, this is why. No, something else. There was a philosophical shift in how people value curiosity. And that shift remains to this day. To this day. And one easy way to check it is just look at the Nobel Prizes, for example. They've been given for 216 years. And let's just compare it to communities. Look at Jews, for example. There aren't that many Jews in the world. About maybe 15 million, plus or minus. The modern Jewish community is highly invested in education, in discovery, having new ideas, contesting old ideas, and that manifests in these numbers. So what I have next is the number of Nobel Prizes in the sciences won by Jews. Here it is. This is as of this past October. Okay? This is an extraordinary number, 25%. And I included economics just... I don't want to get any fights with anybody later. Putting them in, taking them out doesn't change these numbers significantly, okay? So this is a population pool of 15 million people in the world. Many of these are discoveries made in already sort of wealthy countries, so the United States especially. But the takeaway here is there's about 15 million people drawn, that's the population from which these awards are drawn. So now let's look at the Islamic population world. It's more than 1 billion. It's like 1.3 billion people. It's like 800 times larger population. We can ask, how many Nobel Prizes have Muslims won over the 116 years? You can just ask that. It's a very answerable number. Okay? Here it is. So, none in biomedical, none in economics. The one in physics is, if you could include it or not. The person who won it was a Pakistani Muslim, not a Middle Eastern Muslim, and he attached himself to a branch of Islam that in his home community was rejected as not being the right strain of Islam. So other Islamic people didn't even count him as Islamic. Right? So you can take that in or put it out, I don't know. It doesn't really much change the results here. So what you have are the effects on a huge population of people that interfere with one's ability to think about the natural world in a way that would then have you query it and experiment upon it. If you have any Muslim friends, you wouldn't have to spend more than a few minutes, maybe at most a few hours, before you will hear the phrase, Allah willing. It's a common phrase. It's in the vernacular. And that derives from the notion that everything that happens is God's will. And so, for me, there are profound lessons here in terms of, well, what is it that what ways of thinking are you going to put in control of people's thoughts and conduct? And if it has to do with your sort of personal religious truths, well, then they don't really apply to other people who are not your religion. And if you have a pluralistic society, what you really want to do is base your laws and legislations and things on objective truths. And when you do that, it applies to everyone in a meaningful way. And then people can go off in their corners and do what they like. But if you start affecting everybody with a personal truth that undermines investigations of the physical universe, you basically cut off your progress at the kneecaps. And this is what we've seen over the past millennium. And I worry occasionally that that's happening in the United States today. Because if you believe something is true based on faith, the only way you can convince someone else of that is if you force them into it, if they don't want it, or you have a war with them. And personal truths are not for everyone. They're for the people for whom they matter personally. And so, if you're going to advance an entire civilization, an entire society, a nation, in whatever way that matters, in your health, your wealth, your security, it seems to me that ought to be based on objective truths. That's the surest way to protect your future. Otherwise, you keep everything else personal. That's just, if I had to put out a recommendation, that's what it'd be. And it's rare that I tell people what to do. I never do that. I just offer points of view. You take it and do what you want with it. Okay? It's just the universe. I'm sharing with you here. Anyone here from Canada? I don't believe that. Canadians have a way of slipping in. You don't know they're Canadian until an about comes out of their mouth. Then everyone turns and looks. Well, this is Canada's $5 note. And So here's what happened. In the last couple of years, the Canadians figured out that they don't need to remind themselves that they like hockey. So they redesigned the $5 bill, and it now contains the International Space Station. Give it up for Canada!
Whoa! I love Canada.
And what for me the coolest thing, so Canada, the space station has a robotic arm designed, built, manufactured in Canada, and attached to the, and so it's called the Canada arm. One run-on word, it's kind of cute. And they do that for other things. They make regional jets. They call it Canadair, right? They double use that A. And so the Canada arm, I think the greatest, it's not that it's a robotic arm that impresses me most. It's that no matter what the arm is doing, the picture you have of it, it says Canada broadside on it, with the maple leaf flag in full. No matter the thing, every picture of it has the, and so that's to me the brilliant engineering about it. That astronaut is very likely their most famous astronaut. What's the guy's name? Chris Hadfield, who we had him as a guest on Star Talk, and he sang a song. He sang that David Bowie song in orbit. Major Tom? Oh, Space Oddity, thank you. Ground control to Major Tom. So he's like strumming it on his guitar, and then while he's floating through the space. That was very cool. It was very cool, and then he made a YouTube video of it, and when the YouTube video passed like 10 million, he got a phone call from David Bowie. So they worked that out among themselves, and then just as a point to all this, just a few more folks. So England is here again. Michael Faraday. We profiled him as well in Cosmos. There's a whole episode on him. By the way, he's a devout Christian, and but he knew the difference between doing experiments in a laboratory and whatever are his efforts to derive spirituality from the Bible. He did not use the Bible as a science textbook. That's the point I'm making here. All right. So here we have Louis Pasteur, of course French, and I have no idea what this guy's doing to that dog, but it does not look good for the dog. We got my man Isaac Newton in the middle left. That's my man. Isaac Newton. We've got Leonhard Euler in the upper left, a brilliant Swiss mathematician. Galileo in the upper right, and that's Italy, of course, again. And then we have Carl Friedrich Gauss from Germany, the 10 Deutschmark. And when I looked at this bill, and I said, wait a minute, what am I noticing there? And I zoomed in, and I said, whoa, holy, there's a mathematical distribution function on the currency. It's got f of x, sigma 2 pi. This is the famous bell curve. Gauss invented this. The bell curve. It's the most potent tool to the statistician's arsenal that exists. The bell curve. He came up with it, among a zillion other things. So I just thought this was brilliant, to just put it on there. Again, we're talking about culture. If science is in your culture, it percolates up in these ways. It's not a special program to get you interested in science. The science is just there every place you step. Well, you step when I can't step. Show where the science is there. See that? You know what I wonder? These speakers are my voice coming back to me. So if I put this microphone really close to it, I should get feedback. That'd be kind of cool. Should I try that? No. That would be science. Yes, all in the interest of science. Do we have any scientists on our currency? Yeah, okay. So apparently Some of you have not yet seen a $100 bill in your life, so you have to work a little harder. Maybe that day will come. So
He got you.
Ben Franklin was world famous for his experiments in electricity. World famous. So let's see what symbols and iconography of his scientific efforts are on the currency. Is there a lightning bolt? No. Is there a kite with a key? No. There is no trace that this man was a scientist on our $100 bill. So of course he's not on the bill because he was a scientist. He's on our bill because he was a founding father, Benjamin Franklin. And it's odd because he like invented the lightning rod. The lightning rod. And here was an interesting sort of phenomenon back then. So what did the lightning rod do? If you have a light, it's a metal stick at the highest point of your structure. So here's what happens. A storm cloud comes overhead. Now the storm cloud, for every bit that rains, electrons collect on the ground. And the cloud has a net positive charge. And all those electrons want to get back to the cloud. If they succeed, you will perceive that as a lightning bolt. Okay? So, here's the cloud moving, and there's electrons in the ground following the cloud, right? And they hate moving through air, because air is an electrical insulator. But now there's a structure here, there's a building. So now the electrons can climb up the building and get closer to the cloud. This is why lightning strikes tall things rather than short things, because electrons are opportunistic. Now, you want to control, if you have a lightning bolt, you want to control what it hits. So you put a piece of metal at the top of your building. And so if any electrons discharge back to the cloud, it'll happen through that piece of metal and not your chimney or some other part of your structure that would then destroy your house. By the way, if you make this pointy and the electrons gather there, they can't all stay in the metal at once. And so they spill out and trickle their way up to the cloud. So lightning rods not only reduce your chances of getting struck by lightning, if you are struck by lightning, they protect your structure. This is just brilliant. It's brilliant, and you have to be as brilliant as Franklin to come up with something that simple. So now, watch what happens. He makes this available to everyone. Now, previously, back in the late 1700s, early 1800s, what are the tallest structures in any town? Churches, of course. Before the lightning rod, churches would get hit by lightning. And this became a very good selling point for other churches that were not. Okay? If you have competing religious philosophies, if you were not struck by lightning, you had a leg up on that one, all right? So Ben Franklin gives everybody's got one now. And our churches that might have been destroyed by lightning are no longer. There was some in the day that accused Ben Franklin of heresy for thwarting the will of God. Now just pause for a moment and reflect on that. So here we have a womanizing, beer-drinking, overeating man thwarting the will of your all-powerful God. What does that mean? Who are you worshiping? Just think about that. How does that work? I think they would have thought that through. But anyhow, so I thought there's plenty of extra real estate here to put lightning bolts and things, and I just figured, what we should do maybe is lobby Congress to get equations on our currency. How about that? You think that'll go over well? Let's take a look at some. So I'm proud to share with us collectively those achievements, not only in the scientists, but how cultures responded to them over those years. And with the occasional stumbling blocks, but basically, it's a proud thing that science can be an international enterprise and is so respected internationally. Besides, let's go to the 21st century, United States. Notice what slide preceded this. Okay, so I'll make that clear. Okay, so this is the storytelling part. I told you I was going to sit here and talk to you. Okay. So, I count myself among the ranks of responsible citizens of the country. I mostly follow laws, you know. But I was an academic, so, you know, I'm in college, then I'm in graduate school, then I'm a postdoc, and I'm not in one place for more than 3 or 4 years at a time. So, the first time that I was ever called for jury duty, because you need a certain number of consecutive years in place, I might have been 33 or something. I mean, no, when was this? I can tell you exactly. I was 38, first time I was called for jury duty. Okay. Now, at the time, I was teaching at Princeton University. Okay?
Ooh.
So I felt very, I don't know if patriotic is the right word, I felt very responsible to be called in for jury duty. And I got dressed, and I was walking distance where I am from the courthouse. And your name gets called, and you wait in line, and you get called, and then, okay, fine. And I get picked, I'm in like, there's 20 of us at some point. And then there's that Q&A part that the lawyer goes through. But I don't think they call it Q&A, because then you might actually understand the word. Can't have that in law. You should never use a word that you immediately afterwards have to define it to who you're talking to. That's not communication. That's laying a lexicographic smokescreen. So anyhow, so here's the Q&A. It's, Mr. Tyson, it says here you teach at Princeton University. So I said, yes. I said, it's a seminar. He said, oh, what's the nature of that seminar? Freshman seminar. I said, it's a class on the nature of scientific evidence and the relative unreliability of eyewitness testimony. On the street. I was gone so fast from that room. However high eyewitness testimony is in the court of law, it is the lowest form of evidence in the court of science. Anybody knows that. Right? And so I say this, and I was just done for it. And so I said, wow, okay, next time, let me not say that. Okay? So it's 3 or 4 years later, I'm called back, and I'm down to like, there's the 12 that fit in the box, and there's like 3 or 4 more sitting outside, and I'm in this last set, and the defendant is there. I've not gotten that far before. The defendant was right there. The defendant was charged with criminal possession of cocaine. And so the judge reads the particulars of the case to us all. And they still haven't picked the 12 jurors. This is like still preamble to that. And so the judge reads. It says the suspect was picked up by an undercover police officer in Upper Manhattan, I live in Manhattan, and was found to be in possession, got the exact numbers, something like 7,000 milligrams of cocaine. This is not disputed. Okay, so I'm listening to this.